Greetings, MBA students. In this video, I'm going to explain to you how to read the economic indicators, such as the unemployment rate, to tell a story about how the economy is doing. And this is important because it helps, you can help protect yourself from trends that might happen in terms of jobs, stock market, investments, and so on. So I'm going to put a presentation, share with you a presentation, and this will help to give you some basic ideas about the way the economy functions and how we could understand about it. So here we go. So I'm going to be training you to be an instant economist. And basically, what we're trying to do here is to understand the ups and downs of the economy and how we can protect ourselves from the ups and the downs. So there's ups and downs of the economy is called a business cycle. The top of the business cycle is called the peak. The bottom of the business cycle is called a trough. And when you go downwards, it's called a recession. When you're moving upwards, it's called the expansion. And a very deep drop, like what happened during COVID, could be called a depression. So we want to know, can we read the tea leaves to find out, are we going up or down, or is the bottom going to fall off, and how we can protect ourselves from that. So our task is just like you go to the doctor's office, they check your vital signs, your temperature, your blood pressure. We're going to do the same things in the economy to look to see what's happening and what is the implications for jobs, income, growth, and stability. So we're going to look at some core indicators on overall economic trends. Then we're going to look at the capacity to buy and sell. That means about producers and consumers. And then we're going to look at some vital signs in the economy, such as inflation and unemployment and so on. So let's begin first with some big picture trends. These tell you the big picture of what's going on in the economy. So GDP stands for gross domestic product. It's a measure of all that is produced in the economy, all the cars, all the consultancies, all the housing put together, and whatever is produced in this country, whether it is by a foreigner, by an American, that's our GDP. And we want to make sure that we are measuring it right. So we also have real GDP that will take away any price increases, so we know what's actually produced in the country. And then we look at these growth rates over time. The second indicators is called leading indicators, and these are a group of indicators put together, and we're going to look at the sign of this leading indicator. For instance, for 2 consecutive quarters, it's a positive sign. We know the economy is moving up. 2 consecutive quarters, there's a negative sign. We know the economy is going down. If there's a positive sign and a negative sign, we got to wait and see what's going on. Budget deficit, are we spending more than we're getting in taxes? And so as a percentage of the GDP, we should want to keep it around 5%. We don't want it to be 50, 100, 120% of what we are earning. That means we're living beyond our means and that we're spending too much money, and it's going to cause other problems in the economy. Same way, when you look at our relationship of trade and investments with the rest of the world, we don't want to have a importing more than we are exporting, because that's a deficit. But sometimes importing more than exporting may not be a bad thing. For instance, if we're importing COVID vaccines, that's good. It'll cause a deficit, but it's important for our economic health. And then we can look at this as a percentage of GDP to see, is it huge, is it small? And that can help us understand what might be happening in the future. And then finally, we look at global competitiveness, how well are we competing with the rest of the world? Are people buying our products? Are people wanting to invest here? And what are these trends? So these are big picture trends in the economy. Then we look at kind of like deeper into what is our capacity to buy? So focusing on consumers, the people who are buying. We look at the consumer confidence index. It's a number, and you want to see if the number is growing, because that shows consumers are getting more confident. You're going to look at wages and income. Are they growing? Are they declining? And we're going to look at, are people actually buying the computers and the cars and the dishwashers? because that's going to be important for economic growth. On the other hand, we're going to be looking at the capacity to sell, and this is the producers, the manufacturers. How are they doing? So one indicator is this purchasing managers index. Every company has a buyer. Survey them to find out, are you buying? Are you not? What are your perceptions of the future? So all of that is combined into an index. And if it's over 40, 50, it shows that they are positive about the future. We can expect growth. Then you look at actual prices that producers and manufacturers are paying, and because we know that what costs them will automatically come back and cost us. And then we look at their capacity to produce. Are they operating at full capacity, and we considered 85% full capacity, or are they producing at a lower rate? So suppose they are at 65% capacity. We know that they can afford to keep producing without prices going up, because they're not using their full capacity. Then we look at housing trends, because housing is this big engine that pulls the economy, because so many different businesses are involved in producing houses. And so what are the trends? Is it growing? Is it declining? As a big indicator of about overall economic health. Are people buying houses? Are the prices of housing at a reasonable rate, or is it an inflated market? And what about the people who are buying or renting houses? They call them cost burden households. If they're spending more than 30% of their income in housing costs, they're called cost burden. And if they're spending so much money on housing, they will not have any money to spend on other things. And so the economy will not pick up if no one there to buy. And as I mentioned earlier, we look at trade, people buying our products and services, and foreigners investing in this country, we investing in assets across the country. And then we look at the jobs and the quality of jobs, how many people are in the workforce, and is it growing, is it declining, and to give us an overall sense in huge, very critical parts of the economy. Finally, there's some quick vital signs of the economy, like you go to the doctor's office too. The quick ones, one is inflation, prices. So when you go to the doctor's office and you have a fever, it shows you have an infection in your body. Your body is fighting an infection. So prices rise quite a lot in the economy from the consumer side or from the producer side. We know there is something not quite right that needs to be fixed. So we look at indicators like the consumer price index and the producer's price index to see whether these prices are increasing or decreasing. We'll also look at, are people getting jobs? What is the unemployment rate? Is it increasing or decreasing? And how do you break it down by race, gender, and so on to find out if there are some structural problems in the economy? We also look at people claiming unemployment to get a sense as to how many unemployed. And this was big news during COVID, where these unemployment claims really shot through the roof. But then look to see, is it varying by race, gender, region? Are some people bearing the brunt more than others? And that will give us some good policy insights what to do. Interest rates are the price of money. Same way, like inflation, you want to make sure that interest rates are stable and they're not rising at a very dramatic rate, because they're indicating that the economy needs some attention. So some core interest rates are the prime rate, the rates that banks charge their best customers, the federal funds rate, the overnight rate for banks when they need a loan and they borrow from each other. And if they go to the central bank, the Federal Reserve Bank, as the lender of the last resort, they're charged the discount rate. And so these are kind of the baseline rates in the economy. And when these rise, everything else rises in the economy. So you're going to track them to see what are the trends about the price of money. Is money going to be more expensive in the future? And if so, what does that mean for jobs and income and economic growth? Then we look at the price of our currency relative to another currency, like the peso or the euro, and we call it the exchange rate. So are people having confidence in our currency? In that case, our currency would have a stable value. But if it keeps dropping, that means people are getting rid of our currency, they're losing faith in our economy. And so what do we need to do about it? So you're going to track those rates, trends and exchange rates. And finally, you don't want to have huge inequality and poverty in your economy, because they are kind of the long-term weaknesses of the economy. So that's the trend of the economy. Now we can put all of these together and look at some actual numbers of the economy, and encourage you to go to this website called tradingeconomics.com, search for United States under countries, and they'll pull you all these different indicators of the economy. For example, we are seeing that at an annual rate, GDP grew in the last quarter by 0.4%, not a whole lot of growth, right? And so notice the negative rates during COVID, right? So we want to see the economy growing and growing at a steady level. We are optimistic that because we have a lot of vaccinations done, our economy will get a jump start and we can start moving. So we're going to keep watching that trend. Unemployment rate is fairly high, 5.9%. 4% is considered to be the natural rate of unemployment. We don't necessarily worry about it because it's people between jobs or needing training for a new job. But as these numbers increase, as they increased during COVID, you can see a number there called, say, 14.8%. And if you break it down by race, you're going to find some of the highest unemployment rates in the Black workers and American, Native American workers. And so teen unemployment rates. So you're going to look and see, are people finding jobs, and are these jobs good jobs? The price of money, inflation rate, 2% is considered zero inflation. We have 5%. So there's a concern that all this money that's in the economy through the federal stimulus spending is suddenly going to show up in not much produced, but everybody wanting it. Just think about issues like rental cars or housing. All those prices are going up right now. So whether if they keep rising with production not expanding, then we have a problem. So we're beginning to watch whether we are going to get a fever in the economy, and how do we deal with it. And so when you look at the last indicator on this list is the interest rate. Fairly low right now because we're coming out of the depression, but COVID pandemic. But people are expecting, because inflation is rising and the economy is picking up, that the Federal Reserve is going to raise the price of money to make sure that we're not growing too fast. And so people are expecting inflation interest rates to rise. That means when you go to buy a car or a house in the future, possibility you're going to pay a higher rate. So you're going to put all these pictures together, and you go to each of these tabs, you get more details. One of your assignments, I'm asking you to put all of these together to tell the story. Are we in a recession? Are we expanding? Have we reached the peak? Are we in a depression? What are these numbers saying? Because you might argue that there are signs of growth, there are signs of concern, and so I'm going to have to monitor it because it's going to affect my savings. It's going to affect whether I have a job or not. It's going to affect how much it costs me in the store. And so I'd have to start protecting myself if I'm expecting to high in inflation. So a story: when I bought my house many years ago, the realtor told me on Friday, the mortgage banker told me on Friday that here's the rate, and I give you to 8 o'clock on Monday to lock in, otherwise I can't guarantee it. So I was trying to figure out, is the economy going to expand or contract? Because if it's expanding, I can expect the interest rates on my mortgage payments to be higher tomorrow. But if it's not, or if it's sluggish, I have some bargaining room. So over the weekend, I look at these kinds of numbers and I reached the conclusion that the economy was a little sluggish. It's not going to expand on me right now. That means it's not going to cause prices and interest rates to go up. I can wait. So I didn't call him at 8 o'clock. I called him at 1 o'clock and said, can you make me an offer I can't refuse? And he dropped the exchange interest rate by a few percentage points. I think I saved about $14,000 over the life of a loan. So this kind of information is important, it's practical. And I hope right now you have become an instant economist, and that you can similarly read these numbers, tell a story of what's going on, and then make good economic decisions. So till the next time, Thanks for joining this and listening to this recording, and let me know if you have any questions.